So, you know how AI can seem almost magical with its accuracy? Well, a big part of that magic isn't about finding one single super smart model. It's actually about something called ensemble methods. And the core idea is super simple, really. A team of experts is almost always going to be smarter than a lone genius. It's true for us, and it's true for AI. So let's dive in and see how this whole thing works.
Think about it for a second. Let's say you're facing a really tough decision, maybe a medical one. Would you rely on the opinion of just one doctor? Probably not, right? You'd want a second opinion, maybe even a third. Because even the best expert has their blind spots, their own little biases. And guess what? It's the exact same thing with AI models. A single model, no matter how good, can only see part of the picture.
Okay, so to really get why these teams of models are such a game changer, we first got to look at what happens when you don't use them. Let's talk about the problems you run into when you're just relying on a single lone wolf model.
So a single model can get into trouble in a few ways. First, there's something called overfitting. Think of it like a student who just memorizes the answers for a test but doesn't actually understand the subject. The second they see a new question, they're toast. Then you've got the opposite problem, high bias, where the model is too simple and misses all the important details. And finally, high variance. This is when a model is just all over the place, totally unpredictable. So you can see the problem, right? It's just got a limited point of view. The solution? You guessed it, bring in the team. And this is where our hero enters the scene. Ensembles. The whole idea is that if one model is pretty good, a whole team of them working together isn't just a little better, it's way better. That's the entire philosophy behind ensemble methods right there.
All right, so let's get a formal definition on the table. What is ensemble learning? It's basically the technique of matching together the predictions from a bunch of different machine learning models. Why? To get a final answer that's way more accurate and reliable than what any single one of those models could give you. You're essentially building a supermodel by combining the brain power of a whole team of AIs.
Now, let's connect the dots. Remember those problems we talked about with a single model? Well, this is how ensembles fix them. That overfitted model that memorized everything, the team can average out its weird predictions and make it more stable. That model that was way too simple, the team can boost its overall performance. And here's the really cool part. You can take a bunch of models that are actually kind of weak on their own, combine them, and end up with one super strong predictor. It's incredible.
Okay, so we've got the what and the why down. Now for the really fun part, the how. How do you actually build one of these AI super teams? Well, it turns out there are three main strategies that data scientists use all the time.
First up, we've got a strategy called bagging. It's short for, wait for it, bootstrap aggregating. Yeah, it's a mouthful, but the idea is actually super intuitive. Imagine you have a big case file. Instead of giving the whole file to one detective, you make a bunch of random copies of different parts of the file and give one to each detective on your team. They all work on it separately at the same time, and then at the end, they all come together and vote on who the suspect is. That's bagging.
So the process is pretty simple. You take your data, you create a bunch of random little samples of it, and you train a totally separate model on each one. Then you just average their answers or let them vote. And the most famous example of this? You've probably heard of it, the random forest algorithm. It literally builds a whole forest of individual decision trees and lets them vote to get the final, much smarter answer.
All right, strategy number 2 is boosting, and this one is totally different. If bagging was about everyone working at the same time, boosting is about working in a sequence, one after another. Think of it like a production line. The first model makes a guess. The next model in line doesn't start from scratch. Its main job is to fix the mistakes the first one made. Then the third model corrects the second one's mistakes, and so on. Each model in the chain gets progressively smarter by focusing on the errors of the one before it.
And it's this focus on learning from mistakes, step by step, that makes boosting so incredibly powerful. This is the strategy behind some of the absolute titans of machine learning that you see winning competitions all the time. Algorithms like AdaBoost and, of course, the legendary XGBoost.
And that brings us to our third and final strategy, stacking. So, let's recap. If bagging is like a democracy where everyone gets a vote, and boosting is like a relay team passing the baton, then stacking is like hiring a really smart manager. You've got your team of diverse experts, and then you have this one meta model that sits on top. Its only job is to learn who's good at what, and then make the final call based on that knowledge.
So it's a two-step dance. On level 1, you've got all your different models, maybe a decision tree, an SVM, whatever, and they all make their predictions. Then on level 2, that meta model manager takes all those predictions as its input and figures out the best possible final answer. You can almost think of it as an ensemble of ensembles, which is pretty cool.
Okay, this is all great stuff in theory, but you're probably wondering, so what? Where does this stuff actually show up? Let's take a look at where these ensemble methods are making a real, tangible impact out there in the wild.
And the short answer is pretty much everywhere you look. We're talking about finance, where they're catching credit card fraud. We're talking about healthcare, helping doctors diagnose diseases earlier. Even that recommendation system that knows exactly what movie you want to watch next on your streaming service? Yep, probably an Ensemble behind the scenes. The list just goes on and on.
But let's get specific. Let's zoom in on a classic business problem, predicting customer churn. You know, trying to figure out which of your customers are about to cancel their subscription or stop buying your product. For a lot of companies, getting this right can be worth millions of dollars.
So, if you threw a single standard model at this problem, you might get something like, say, 78 to 83% accuracy. And hey, that's not terrible. But look what happens when you build a stacking ensemble using those exact same models as a team. The accuracy skyrockets to 91%. That is not just a little bump. An improvement like that is the difference between guessing and knowing, and it can literally save a company millions in lost business.
All right, as we start to land the plane here, it's important to be real about this. Ensemble methods are amazing. They really are. But they're not some magic wand you can wave at every single problem. So let's lay out the pros and cons, the final verdict.
So the strengths are obvious, right? You get way better accuracy, your predictions are more reliable, and you avoid that whole overfitting mess. But there's always a but. There is a trade-off. These things are more complicated. They need more computer horsepower to run. And they can be harder to understand. Sometimes you get a great answer from the team, but it's tough to know exactly how they came up with it. That's what people call the black box problem.
You know, there's a saying that I think just nails this whole concept perfectly. A single model learns, but an ensemble understands. And that really is the core of it, isn't it? It's the difference between simple pattern recognition and a genuine, deep understanding that comes from combining multiple points of view.
So, if there's one thing to take away from all this, it's that teamwork and collaboration, they aren't just for us humans anymore. We've actually managed to build that very idea into our artificial intelligence. And that leaves you with a pretty big question, right? If we can teach machines to work together this well, what's next?